I'm Joe Pardavila. Welcome back to the Forbes Books podcast. And entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes. I should know I've spoken to hundreds of them. There's the model turned entrepreneur, ballerina turned entrepreneur, TikTok influencer turned entrepreneur, the socialite turned entrepreneur. I can go on and on. And this week, for the first time, I'm joined by an archaeologist turned entrepreneur. Michal Morrison has an amazing story of perseverance and grit that needs to be heard to believed. She is the founder of Austin-based Michal Morrison, a new science-first skincare company looking to revolutionize the beauty industry. So let's get to it. Michal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So I normally don't do this, Michal, but I found something in your bio that really jumped out at me. So when I was a little kid, my favorite movies were the Raiders of the Lost Ark films. Indiana Jones is my biggest hero. I actually have some movie reproductions in my home of the fertility statue from the Raiders. And so when I saw in your bio that you pursued archaeological studies, I was like, oh my God, this person lived a life I was meant to live. Because when I was in high school, I went to my guidance counselor. I'm like, I want to be an archaeologist. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then I realized it's really hard to do that. And I'm not really good at school. So it didn't work out. But can you tell me how that happened for you?
Sure. And to start off, I'm a huge fan of those movies too. It's funny though, is so many archaeologists really hate those movies.
I know.
Yeah, it's not accurate at all, but they're super fun. Yeah, that was one of the things that actually inspired me as a little kid, that and collecting rocks in the backyard and picking up shells on beaches and all of that. But I really had this desire to get into archaeology starting in college. And this was where I really learned a lesson that you don't get what you don't ask for. You really just have to put yourself out there. I heard of a professor who was going to work on an archaeological excavation in Greece on the island of Crete. And I said to myself, I have to do that. They were full. All the spots were taken by a bunch of students, undergrad and graduate school. It was a huge excavation, actually, a couple different universities working on it together. But I went to him anyway, and I said, I know it's full, but I'm going to ask anyway, can I go? And he said, sure, we'll make a spot for you. And that's how that happened. It was my first big, trip by myself abroad. And it was life-changing. It's one of the most exciting summers I've ever spent, actually.
That's so cool. And so I guess that's a perfect place to transition into being a risk taker, because that's a risk. Obviously you said the first time you went on your own trip, not only that, it's not like you're going on your first trip to the Bahamas. You're going on an archaeological dig in these exotic locations. And so I think that segues perfectly into entrepreneurship, because as most entrepreneurs will know, it's probably the most dangerous job in America right now, being an entrepreneur. So what was your connection to entrepreneurship? Did it come from your family? Did you have people around you that embraced it? Because, Michal, what I like to joke is I'm a Gen Xer. And so the term entrepreneurship has really changed over the course of my lifetime. When I was younger, if someone said they were an entrepreneur, you would immediately say, oh, so you're unemployed. Now, entrepreneurs are the rock stars of this world. I mean, they're on magazine covers. And right. I'm just curious when you fell in love with entrepreneurship, or just were one of the things that sort of oh, that's something I could do.
My path to that is very unusual. I was really fortunate, though, is that I grew up in a family of really hardworking people, a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. Most of them were men, though. And so I didn't have a lot of things to look to growing up of women who were running companies. I have a cousin now who has a small business, and I've started a company too, actually. And we're kind of some of the first, which is an exciting movement, in our family history. I'm really proud of that. I'm also really grateful for having been able to watch parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles work really hard, become successful, and use that to the benefit of their communities and give money away, which is one of the things that I'm really motivated to do. And part of my motivation for working to become so successful at this is I want the capability to do the same thing and to give money to things that are really important to me. But I never took a business class. I studied English and history first in undergrad, and I actually went to seminary for my graduate work.
Man.
And so there was nothing business oriented to that. I'd never taken an accounting class, none of that. So I could say that I started my own company, during COVID in 2020, and that is what happened. But the story really does go back 6 years. Is that I was actually home in between two archaeological digs that I had scheduled, and I was in a very bad car accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury that was severe. And I was on bed rest for a year. It took me years after that of cognitive and physical therapy, months and months and months to recover. And so archaeology doesn't fit that very well.
Right.
I've been
Yeah.
very fortunate to make a huge recovery, but I have permanent stuff. I have a disability. There's things that I deal with on a day to day basis that working in the middle of nowhere on an archaeological dig, months away from home in a really intense environment, that just doesn't fit my health so much anymore,
Hmm.
which I miss it a lot, but that was just the practical conclusion that I had to come to. And so I decided to start applying for jobs in Austin. And I'll tell you, applying for jobs as a disabled person is really nightmarish. I think it's very common for people, when you disclose a disability, to think, oh, they're going to be a liability.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to hire them. If it's between this person and another one who doesn't have a disability, even if people don't say that, that is sort of a mindset that I've experienced from hiring managers is everything else being equal, we're not going to hire the disabled person
I feel
because,
like that's a dirty little secret, Michael, because I think
yeah,
anyone who's filled out a job application over the last several years, when you get down towards after you've done all your experiences and your school, it comes down to those boxes, whether you're a veteran,
right,
whether you're a minority, and then lastly, if you have any disabilities. What
right.
have you heard anything about like? And it sounds like it was not a very good experience for you. Like when that
No.
box is checked, does that automatically disqualify people that you've known? And obviously, it's anecdotal, but from your perspective, did you feel like you were being disqualified because you checked that box?
And I never actually checked that box.
Oh,
I talked about
really?
it in interviews. Yeah, when I would get to the last interview before them making a hiring decision. And it's tricky. People in the disabled community have to think about this all the time is when or do I at all disclose my disability? Because there's a real valid fear of what if someone doesn't think I can do it? Even if I totally can and I bring a really unique perspective that would help this company. I bring value that nobody else can bring because of my life experience. But are they going to see that? So I never checked the box. I only talked about it in the last interview. And I'll tell you a story that represents this perfectly. It's extreme. And I almost hesitate to tell it because this is a very sensitive topic in the United States. But I had a hiring manager. I got to the last interview and I told her, here's my disability. Here's the 2 or 3 things that I would need to be my best at work because I'm a brain trauma survivor. And she looked at me and she said, oh, Michael Ann, I'm not going to hire you now. No one's going to hire you. I would worry that one day you would snap, bring a gun to work, and shoot everyone in the office.
Wait, I'm sorry. Was this a real experience? This sounds like
Yes,
something out of something from Netflix. Are you kidding me?
right. No, I'm not kidding. And I was so
Wow.
stunned by that. I feel it in my body even today. The
Oh
experience
my
of being
God.
told that because you've had a brain injury, I would always worry that you're dangerous. And
Hmm.
she said it with a smile on her face, like she was joking about it. And I got up, and that was the day I said, I'm never going to apply for another job working for somebody else again. I'm not going to do it because I know what I can do, what I'm capable of. I trust myself. I have worked so hard to create resiliency, and I can do this. I can start my own company. And so when it was 2020, everything shut down. Like, this is the perfect opportunity to do this. I ended up doing putting some things together prior to that. And that's another thing for the disabled community is there's a really high either unemployment rate or chronic underemployment, which
Right.
is also very traumatic.
Wow.
We have more to pay for healthcare. It just takes more to live and be well. And so when you're underemployed too, you might have $2,500 coming in the door a month. And that's more than you had 2 years ago because you're a little bit better now. But it's very complicated to figure out how to manage your life that way. And so I decided, like you said, the risk thing, this was worth the risk to me because it was going to be more difficult to keep a disability from a company that I wanted to work for and perhaps sacrifice my own well being in order to work for them. I wasn't willing to do that.
Hmm. And when you came to this decision and you're like, I'm going to be my own boss, did you know what field you to be going into? Because we were just talking about we're going to archaeology, you were digging things.
Right.
So it's not like, hey, how can I tie in my archaeology into a business plan? So was Michael Morrison the first thing, or were there other things before that led you to it?
I knew I wanted to get into skin, and I knew I wanted to bring something really science forward to the industry. My mom has unfortunately dealt with a ton of trouble with skin cancer. And so I grew up with that as part of my worldview of take care of your skin, put on SPF every day. Truly, I'm not sure if I've left the house without SPF on since I was 15 or 16 years old. And thank you, Mom, for
I was
giving
going to
me that
say, your skin must be
recommendation.
awesome. Yeah.
I hope so. I've tried really hard. So I was thinking about skincare, and of course, it's a flooded market.
Mm.
There's so many new brands that have launched even during COVID, and the industry has done incredibly well, while others have suffered during COVID. And so I was like, I know I want to get into this. This is exciting to me, but what's the point if we don't have something differentiating? So I did about 6 months of research about who's doing the best work in the industry, and I met Paul Primo, who I'm currently working with. It's been such a joy to work with him. He's really a titan of the industry. He's worked in luxury beauty for 45 years. He is the man who's defined a lot of the beauty industry. And so I've been really fortunate to be able to bring him onto my team. And he introduced me to Dr. Michael Kahn, who had intellectual property. And so we went into conversations with him. And this science is absolutely remarkable. The sophistication of the science doesn't enter the beauty industry very often, if at all. So we have something that's totally new. It's a biotechnology being introduced into the world of beauty for the first time. And when I saw that opportunity for intellectual property, which is very rare in skincare, I knew, okay, this is it. This is my entry point, and this is what I want to bring forward to the world. And I've gotten to partner with these wonderful men to do so.
Wow, that's remarkable. It's. I always like to ask like the sliding doors question. You know, that Gwyneth Paltrow
Yeah,
movie. What would have happened if you never met this
right.
individual? I mean, it's crazy how it's led you down this path to now. You know, less than 3 years later, you have a beauty line and a skincare company.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
Mhm.
And you talked about the fact that it's science first. And I want to get into a little bit of the science, but again, keep in mind I'm not very bright, Michael. So keep this as easy as possible.
Okay.
It's stem cell science, which I know for some people can be a controversial topic. So
Right.
to walk me through that, and without getting into the controversies of stem cell, why is this so important, and why is it such a driving factor for Michael Morrison?
So I'm totally with you. I'm asked pretty regularly, actually, and the interviews that I've done recently with beauty editors, they've asked the same thing. Does this feel controversial to people? I think even when I was in high school, so I'm 33 now. So when I was like 16 in high school, I did a presentation on stem cell science. I remember this in like my English class for some reason. And that was the first time that it had really been on a lot of people's radars. And there was that concern about, is this using fetal tissue, or what's happening with that was the main focus 15, 16 years ago or so. It's not so much that anymore. I think where some of the confusion comes in for some consumers is, are you bottling human stem cells? That's not what we're doing at all. I don't think anyone can do that. They don't have a long shelf life once you take them out of somebody's body, although you can do things like injections now, which is just remarkable. This field is absolutely fascinating to me, and I've been fortunate to work with Dr. Khan on this. So I'll give you a little bit of the background. Is Dr. Khan works at the Beckman Research Institute in Los Angeles. He is one of the top scientists in the stem cell world, and it's just this remarkable work over the last 25 years. And so he actually started this in cancer research. He was trying to find a molecule that would cure colorectal cancer. And as happens so often in science, you start looking for one thing and you find about 40 other things. It's like you ask one question and so many other things come to the forefront. So he found through this 25 years of research in stem cell science that there were also cosmetic implications. So he's still working on the pharmaceutical side, which is really exciting. There's a lot of promise around that. And then I own, through another company, all the cosmetic rights. So we're working with a molecule that's based off of his research. It's called beta stem 6, and it's a metamolecule that supports a signaling pathway in your body called the Wnt pathway. And it's responsible for awakening a lot of cells that have gone dormant as you age. So we can now recruit them back into the process of visibly rejuvenating your skin. So it's much, much more intensive than what you normally see in a bottle on a shelf in a Sephora.
Cool. And thank you for really explaining that down to someone like
Sure.
me. I appreciate that because, it is funny because I think people, like you said, they'll see the line stem cell and they'll automatically start their brain goes into dark places. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you cleared that up. And in a way, it's one of the things where I feel like there's more nuance to life. I think sometimes people
Mhm.
think we're in this black and white world, and we're really not. There's a lot of gray in there. So I'm glad you cleared that up. And so I'm curious in terms of health and beauty. It's a really crowded space. But one thing I've
Yes.
discovered from speaking to entrepreneurs over the last couple of years is that e-com was the game changer. Before
Uh-huh.
e-commerce, to be a health and beauty company, if you were not one of the major players, the Revlons, the L'Oreal's, whatever parent company owns them, you couldn't get on a store shelf, whether it's in a department store or in a pharmacy. But because of e-commerce and the direct to consumer nature of the
Mhm.
product, it's a big difference. So talk to me about how you connect to your community.
Right. That's so true. And we've seen such different interesting behavior from consumers during COVID. Is direct to consumer really did change everything. And now I almost never go into a store to buy anything. I buy almost everything online. So we have a big focus on social media. Our customer that we're at least starting marketing to here at the beginning, since we just launched in December, is very much on Instagram. TikTok, we might eventually get into something like that, but that tends to be a younger consumer. And while our product can give a lot of benefit to younger people by protecting their cell population, people who have more mature skin, they've seen more damage from being in the sun longer, that kind of thing, will receive a more visible benefit over time because there's more damage to clean up. So Instagram is really where we're focusing right now. We've had really good growth right out of the gate. I think people are starting to understand that we have something really differentiated, which there's something to be said for very clever marketing. A lot of people, a lot of brands have really great packaging and really clever marketing, but they don't have differentiated science
Mm.
or they can't really deliver on their brand promise, which was one of the things as a longtime consumer of the beauty industry myself that I was really frustrated with. So that's our challenge and our opportunity is learning how to talk about beta stem 6 and provide science-based education about how skin works to really build that community.
Hmm. And I'm not sure if every woman like this is like this, but my wife has a cabinet full of skin creams
Yeah.
from the stuff that she buys online, stuff she buys on the store, stuff that pops up on her feed. So how is this different from those outside of the science? What kind of impact can for example, my wife is all about anti-aging cream, so I think she owns every anti-aging cream that's ever been created in a lab. So, what differentiates Michael Morrison from the thousands that she has in her cabinet right now?
Well, I bet a lot of the products that she has, they probably have retinol
Yep,
in it, or maybe
bingo.
she's using tretinoin. And yeah. So retinol at this point has been sort of the gold standard for anti-aging. And anti-aging is a funny word to me because I get what it's trying to say. And our molecule by definition is an anti-aging molecule, but we're talking about it more from a cell longevity perspective instead. I think the messaging around anti-aging disproportionately negatively impacts women.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to find different ways to talk about this in a way that's more empowering and affirming. Particularly having gone through a lot of health issues myself, I'm really grateful for every birthday that I have. I don't want to be afraid of aging and I don't want to make other people feel that way too. So people will notice a difference when they come to our website about how we are talking about what we have. Longevity is a very exciting conversation that's growing these days too. So we hope to be resonating with the consumers that are interested in that too. But talking about retinol, I've used retinol for a long time. It is really effective over time, but for a lot of people, it causes a lot of itchiness, red skin, flaking. It's uncomfortable to use. There's an onboarding process really once you get started of months for your skin to get used to it. And so there's people with sensitive skin who straight up can't use it. Like if
Hmm.
you have rosacea, a lot of those people don't want to use the most powerful ingredient that's currently available because it makes their skin really inflamed. What's really exciting about beta stem 6 is that it's not inflammatory. You can put this right on a sunburn and you'll get better faster.
Wow.
You could go to a dermatologist and have a peel done or a laser treatment, and this will accelerate that process of getting to the other side
Wow.
of that whole process. So you're not going to have any bad reactions to something like beta stem 6. We tested it on different skin types and tones as well. You'd be surprised how often that hasn't happened in the past. And that was really, really important to me. So beta stem 6 can replace retinol if people don't want to pursue down that lane. And the serum that we have put this into as well is very lightly moisturizing. So a lot of people are finding that it replaces their moisturizer and retinol and other serums that they've been using. So for the customers who are looking for something really pared down, a really simple routine, a lot of people are going back to that right now. This is absolutely perfect.
Interesting. And for because I'm gonna have to go on the website and buy it for my wife now, because if she finds out I'm speaking to, she's like, "Well, where's my bottle?" But is this something that is this a morning routine, night routine, doesn't any kind of day routine?
So I do it twice a day, like once I wash my face in the morning, and it's the thing that I reach for right before I go to bed. One of the things about retinol and acids that people use, like glycolic acid, things like that, that are also anti-aging and help with maturing skin, is you don't want to use them in the morning because it makes your skin more sensitive to the sun. This will not make you more photosensitive, so you can put it on in the morning. So it'll have that protective benefit during the day. And at night is a really powerful time to put skincare on at all, because that's when your body is rejuvenating
Mm.
itself and sending in the cleanup crews, basically. So if you're putting an active ingredient on your skin as you sleep, that's the time that it's going to be most effective.
It's amazing, Michael, when I speak to entrepreneurs like yourself who are not scientists by nature, but then sort of work in science, how much they become scientists. It's what I equate this to is I did a lot of charity work with families that had kids with battling cancer, and these
Oh,
parents,
good for
by the
you.
time that the kid got through it, were they could basically become
You're
doctors. Like
pros.
they
Right.
had so much knowledge. Did you like turn the fire hose on and just be like, blast me with this information? Or did you take a methodical approach to learn about this? Because you've done a great job of explaining it, especially to someone like me. How long did it take you to be like, I got this?
Hmm. Every time I hear Dr. Khan go through his science presentation, I feel like I learned something new, which is exciting to me because, I have such a love for archaeology, and archaeology is a really interesting combination of the humanities and the sciences. And so, while I didn't bring a background in something like molecular biology or something to this, I do have a real appreciation for the scientific process. I've also really benefited from scientific innovation in my recovery from my traumatic brain injury. So, I have had a history really of doing a deep dive into things that I'm interested in. I'm an avid reader. Like I read 128 books last year
Whoa.
with all my free time. As I'm running a
Yeah.
company, I just absolutely love it. So, Dr. Khan has sent me a lot of his published papers from peer reviewed journals, and I've read all of them. Even if that's not something that will ever be consumer facing because it's so detailed, there aren't as many people who want to do that deep of a dive. It's been really thrilling for me to have the opportunity to learn from the very best.
Mm. And one another thing I've noticed from health and beauty startups is they start with that one product, their flagship
Yes.
their flagship product that is going to basically be the face of the company. Genesis is yours, but it's safe to assume that you can do a lot more. Correct?
Yes, we can. And we have really exciting pipeline coming up with that. So we'll probably be direct to consumer for the entirety of this year and into next year. And we're starting to consider next products. Beta Stem 6 is a really good treatment. It's really a workhorse ingredient. So we want to be focusing on really innovative products as well. A lot of brands eventually expand into things like cleansers and more simple, basic products,
Mhm.
which are all helpful, but it wouldn't be the best choice for us to put Beta Stem 6 into a cleanser because a cleanser's on your face for such a short amount of time. So for us, since we have this really powerful ingredient, it's an opportunity to get really creative about delivery systems for it. We might, be looking into a body product, a neck product. We've done a clinical study on this, and the results are absolutely amazing. So we know what this can do for different areas of skin, face, neck, chest, all of that. And we're pursuing further studies and really want to contribute as much as we can to the research and development process to continue to prove to consumers that this works and to show them how.
May I suggest an under eye cream because my wife owns about 700 bottles of those? Or does Beta Stem already do that with Genesis? Or can you find something that's a little more, targeting for the under eyes?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very common thing. That's where you start to see aging first because that skin is thinner and more delicate. So the serum actually does work very well on that. I There's a lot of serums you don't want to put around your eyes. A lot of products actually that skin is just too sensitive. The Genesis serum is totally fine to put around your eyes. I even put it on my eyelids and
Oh.
you don't feel any tingling, there's no redness, no inflammatory response at all. So she's set up well already
Okay.
with the serum.
Good, good, good. And you've been doing this, upwards of now 3 years. What's this journey
Just
been like?
about.
Yeah, what's it been like for you? Because I know you, it took a lot for you to get to that point of even starting the company. But now that you're 3 years in, is the stresses of starting a company, although I guess they'll never go away. But do you feel like I've developed a product, I'm connecting with a community that you feel like the next 10 years you can now easily predict, as opposed to when you're starting a company, like, okay, let's hope this works. But do you feel confident
Right.
now in the future?
That's such a good question. When we launched 2 months ago, it wasn't just a professional win for me. It was very, very personal because of where I've come from and the amount of work I had to put in to recover. And so to get a product to market, there's a lot of startups that don't even make it to that space. So to reach that milestone was huge for us. And the response has been literally nothing but positive. People are having a really good first experience with it so far, and we're getting really positive feedback. And that's so thrilling that we got to make something that people want and that it's improving their lives and helping them feel confident, and that we're hopefully taking a different approach that contributes more beauty to the world in many ways. So I feel a real sense of accomplishment. It's also sort of a bittersweet thing for me personally, just knowing the struggle that it took to get there. But I'm very, very grateful for it. I also see that there's so much potential for this product and this brand to become a heritage brand, which is what we really want to happen. I don't want to sell people products that don't work. I don't want to contribute the status quo to a flooded industry. I want to make products that people know and have confidence in, that they can reach for it every day and put it on and not have to worry anymore about the rest of their routine. They just go about living the rest of their lives unbothered, with the confidence that some of the best science in the world is behind these products. It's also just sort of bizarre on a personal level to see the huge change that's happened in my life. That 6 years ago, I was either in a doctor's office or in bed. And now it was almost 6 years to the day from my car accident when we launched the company.
Wow.
Almost to the day in December.
That's
And
awesome.
that's just not lost on me, that I've had the opportunity to make as big of a recovery as I have. And now I get to contribute something. And I'm really excited to work hard. I had years where I didn't get to engage in the things that I love. And I love to work hard and be curious and try to contribute value to the people around me. And now I have the opportunity to do that. So I'm just very grateful for that.
And I know your family has had a big impact on you. Just for the sake of this conversation, what did they think when you said to them, "Hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur," after you just been in this horrific accident, you're recovering from a brain? Were they like, "Oh God, Michael, is there there's something else you can do?" I mean, what now? Talk to me about that. How they were doing then, and how they feel today.
Sure. Well, I think there was maybe a little bit of surprise since I hadn't shown an interest in business before. But that accident was such a watershed moment for me. It really catalyzed me thinking about life in a new way and what I was capable of, that I didn't have to stay in the same lane. But they've known me my whole life, so they know that I've been a bit of a risk taker for a while. I've never been afraid to get on a plane and go to a really remote place to work for weeks on end by myself. So starting a company, as risky as it was pretty in line with the rest of my character historically. So I think they were really thrilled, even like the day that I brought my first box over with a product inside and got to show them, and they saw my name on a product and all the work that I'd been doing from home, my home office, all of a sudden was a physical product. And that was a really fun day for me to see the excitement on their faces that this is real and people are going to buy it. And they've been very, very supportive. And my dad posts on Facebook and all this stuff. It's very sweet. So I'm fortunate to have their support.
That's awesome. And you mentioned name on the bottle. Name. Why was it important to name the company after your namesake?
I had to be talked into it a little bit. I'll be honest with you. For months at the beginning, I was thinking, well, what are we going to name this that speaks to the molecule? And there was that option of going, okay, we're going to make this a really science first approach with the name. And Paul, who's on my team, really recommended that we go with my name. And at first I thought, well, that's not something that I had thought about before or considered, but it happens quite a bit. And the way that we've tried to approach it is I want to be a very authentic presence in the beauty world. With my life experiences, we're trying to make this a very accessible brand. We have my values are infused into this brand of we're science first with beta stem 6 and will always contribute to scientific innovation. I'm planet conscious, and we've created a lot of sustainability efforts into our packaging as well, because that's really important to me. But then we're people centric too. And for me, having a disability, it was really important to make a brand that included more people than are typically included. So when you get your box in the mail, you'll see that there's Braille on the side of our packaging. And that was really important to me to include. It took us a couple of days to figure it out and add it on. And that's a feature that to me should just become industry standard across the board, is that there's more than one way to communicate in the world. And what about those people who would participate in this world if they could, but there's no easy way for them to identify products or to feel like a brand is reaching out to them and wants them there. And so once we started to sit down as a team and talk about how I wanted to infuse those values into the company, that's when they said, this is the direction that we need to go, is including your name on the bottle so that you get to talk more about your values, and that's really a focus for the brand too.
That's great. And one thing I always find is a hallmark for a great name is if it sounds like it's existed before. So when I first heard about you, I'm like, oh, Michael Morrison, they've probably been around for years, because it just has that name, like that feels like it's been around, but obviously it's only been around basically a couple months. So I always think that's always
Yeah.
a great name for something when you're like, oh, wait, that's been around for long. I'm like, no, it's just brand new, but it just has a feeling that it has like legacy or some sort of weight to it.
I appreciate that. That's very kind.
And lastly, you're based in Austin, and I have this running
I
joke on
am.
this podcast where, in the 90s and early 2000s, if you started up a company, you were in Silicon Valley. Now, if you're
Right.
starting a company, you have to be in Austin, Texas. So talk to me about
Yeah, you do.
talk to me about the community of entrepreneurship there and what it's like being an entrepreneur in a city that really embraces business.
I feel so fortunate to live here. Really, it's I was born here. I didn't grow up here. I was in Arizona for that part of my life, but I came back as an adult. I guess I'm on year 11 now that this has been my home base, and I have a long family history here. This has always been a very friendly place to live. And that tradition continues even as people continue to move here, and it grows and changes and morphs into the Austin of the future. What I've known from the beginning, and I'm so grateful for this, is when I started telling my community that I was going to start a company, dozens of people reached out to me to say, how can I help? Do you want to get together? I was about to say over coffee, but at the beginning it was over Zoom. And I'll give you 30 minutes, I'll give you an hour, and we'll talk through, how do you make a pitch? How do you what's a cap table? All that stuff. I was really starting from the bottom up. That's one of the things that really sticks out to me about Austin, is that people want to help. That idea that there's only so much success to go around and you're going to hoard it, that doesn't exist here. People want to see others succeed. There's also a lot of support for female founders. And, as a first time female founder, when funding for women who start companies is really difficult to come by, and it's just pretty, that discrimination against women is just pretty egregious, especially in venture capital. I needed all the help that I could get to learn how to do this well. And I had all the help that I needed in my own town. And this is a pretty small place still. So that really says something, to the power of being an Austinite and a Texas entrepreneur, is that people want to help. And I've started to be in the position to be able to give that support back to other people. So the cycle continues.
That's awesome. So have you gotten to the point where you're complaining about the overdevelopment in Austin, Texas, or are you trying to embrace it? Because I know that is as people in Austin are pretty cool and they like to stay weird. They don't like it when it gets too crowded, and they're not fans of traffic. How have you embraced that part of the Austin present and now future?
Great question. Having been born here, I have seen Austin change quite a bit. I think a lot of the spirit is still the same. My concern about growth is it equitable? And Austin doesn't have a stellar history, as a lot of cities in the South don't, about treating different communities equitably. So I think there was something passed in 1928, an ordinance by the city that said if you were Black, you had to move to East Austin, what is now considered East Austin. And because gosh, that's the kind of thing that obviously needs to change.
Yeah.
But now communities where there are a lot of new people moving into those spaces, those families that were forced to move there can no longer afford to stay. And so, how do we create sustainable development where people who have experienced discrimination are supported in having a reliable place to live? That's really important to me. I don't have an answer, unfortunately. I wish I had a background in city planning so I could contribute something really effective to that. But that's one of the big things that Austinites talk about quite a bit, is how do we do this well and fairly and write a better history for ourselves than we've had in the past. But also, it's wonderful to see great things moving into Austin. You can find just about anything you want here now. Amazing food, amazing music. So I'm hopeful that we're able to find a sustainable way to keep the spirit of Austin alive as we grow.
Wonderful. So, Michal, where can my wife and other people who want to buy your beta serum, where do they go? What's the website?
We are at www.michalmorrison.com. We're just direct to consumer right now. And you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Michal, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been a great chat. God bless you and good luck with what's going on. It seems like you picked the right one in terms of what you want to do, because it seems like you were made for this. So congratulations, and
Thank you.
really looking forward to the future of Michal Morrison.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Great talking with you.
You're so welcome, Michal. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.